Welcome to TarantulasDreamTV. You are watching a previously recorded broadcast. Tune in every Monday and Wednesday from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Instagram at TarantulasDreamTV for new episodes. And remember, it is a weird, weird world.
There is a nightmare more terrifying than any other. A nightmare that has haunted thousands of people all over the world.
It felt as if there was a male presence there who was evil.
I can remember seeing this figure in the doorway. I just knew it was female.
A presence comes into the room, paralyzes its victim, then leaps on their body and assaults them.
It hits me so hard at times where it just knocks me off my mattress.
She's choking me so hard that I think that my voice box is going to collapse.
It is intended for the entertainment and instruction of broad-minded adults only, and should not be played to or sold to minors under any circumstances whatsoever. Thank you.
Broadcasting from the floating pie pan in the sky at Groom Lake Analog Recordings. Welcome to Tarantulas Dream TV. Now here's your host, Samba.
Welcome everybody to Tarantulas Dream TV. I am your host with the most, the ghost with the toast,
Samba.
Here we go. Part 2 of Sleep Paralysis tonight. You're here for it, I'm here for it, and I've got the receipts. I've got the voicemails. I've got some callers on the line. I've got it all tonight, so I want to thank everyone for tuning into the show. Phone number for the show is 520-704-7820 at 9:30, opening up the phone lines for everyone else. If you have a story about sleep paralysis you want to share with the listeners, that is the time to do it. But until then, please sit tight, because we've got an action-packed show for y'all tonight. Again, this is Tarantulas Dream TV. I am your host, Samba, and I'm happy to be here. I'm feeling okay. I'm having a little back pain today, and actually, I guess I've had a little back pain for the last 3 or 4 days. It's not a little back pain, actually. It's pretty awful. It's right here. Well, you can't see it's on my back, but it's on the left side, kind of right underneath the rib cage or whatever. I don't know. It's in the back. So anyway, so it's not great. I'm not feeling 100%, and I've been trying to sit up straighter. I've been trying to walk not as hunched over as I normally do. It's just sort of a bad habit. Bad posture. I've kind of cultivated for myself. My persona is sort of an angry caveman looking cave person. But I'm paying for it now. So all you on the air, if you don't have good posture, you're screwed. But anyway, so make sure to stand up straight if you're not already. Anyways, let's get into some headlines before we get into the night meat. I've actually liked calling it the night meat more than the meat of the night, but Trial and Error Collective, if you're on the air, I'm sorry, but night meat sounds pretty good. But anyway, let's get into some headlines. Excuse me. First one's coming from NPR.org. Facebook and Twitter limit sharing New York Post story about Joe Biden. Facebook and Twitter took action on Wednesday to limit the distribution of New York Post reporting with unconfirmed claims about Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden. Leading President Trump Trump's campaign and allies to charge the companies with censorship. Both social media companies said the moves were aimed at slowing the spread of potentially false information, but they gave few details about how they reached their decisions, sparking criticism about the lack of clarity and consistency with which they apply their rules. The New York Post published a series of stories on Wednesday citing emails purportedly sent by Biden's son Hunter that the news outlet says it got from Trump's private lawyer Rudy Giuliani and former Trump advisor Steve Bannon. Facebook was limiting distribution of the Post's main story while its outside fact-checkers reviewed the claims, spokesman Andy Stone said. That means the platform's algorithms won't place posts linking to the story as highly in people's news feeds, reducing the number of users who see it. However, the story has still been liked, shared, or commented on almost 600,000 times on Facebook, according to data from CrowdTangle, a research tool owned by the social network. So potentially big news in regards to what this could do, not necessarily to Joe Biden, but in regards to sort of the Republican sort of attacks on Joe Biden leading up here to the election. I believe it's a little under 3 weeks now, I think. Very similar to the 2016 Hillary Clinton email leaks or whatever you want to call it. So it reeks of a fake controversy, if you will. I don't know. If you look into the actual story, the way that these emails were obtained was purportedly Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, took his laptop into a Delaware computer repair store and never picked it up. And the person who either works there or owns the store, while repairing it, found apparently some emails and pictures and videos of a sexual nature, as well as a different compromising position kind of situation, emails and whatnot. And apparently gave it to Giuliani. I don't know. It seems sus, to say the least, but we might be hearing more about this in the coming week or so, but apparently not really from Facebook, which I think is a good thing. And our last headline is coming from KVOA.com. COVID-19 vaccine trial in Tucson looking for a more diverse group of participants. Drug manufacturers are in a race to make a COVID-19 vaccine during this pandemic. Here in Tucson, people are stepping up to participate in a vaccine trial, but the trial is looking for a more diverse group of participants. Quality of Life Medical and Research Center has had over 800 people participate in the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine trial to date. They're hoping to get more minorities to participate by this Friday. The minority groups have been hit the hardest by COVID from a scientific standpoint, Dr. John McTagan said, or McGettigan, I think that's how you pronounce it. We want them represented because they are going to be a group that we want to make sure that the vaccine's going to work for, as well as for everybody. Dr. McGettigan is a principal investigator for the Moderna COVID-19 trial in Tucson. He says at the end of this week, nationally, the trial is hoping to reach 30,000 participants. His site in Tucson is looking for 50 more minorities to enroll in the trial. So if you head over to KVOA.com or just search Quality of Life Medical and Research Center, you can contact them to potentially participate if you'd like to do that into the Moderna vaccine trial. So maybe we'll hear more about this from listener Matt Blankenship if he has any more updates on his journey with this being part of the COVID-19 vaccine trial. So we'll see about that. But if anyone else signs up for this or wants to sign up for it, please let me know. Send me a DM or something. I'd like to talk to you about how your experience is and maybe something we can share with the listeners. Anyways, so it's 9:10. Let's get into the night meat. Sorry, I made myself laugh there. So sleep paralysis. On Monday, we talked about sort of the scientific reasons for why we have sleep paralysis, why some of us get it and get it hard, and some of us just never experience it. The overwhelming majority of people who took the poll on Instagram said they have never experienced it. So it's not something that everyone's going to experience or has experienced. But there was a sizable amount of people who did, and I actually have voicemails from some of these listeners. So we're going to get into that in a second. But before that, I do want to bring my first guest on the line. If I can head over here real quick. I'm going to put them on the air. So before we get into some of these voicemails and some of my personal stories with sleep paralysis, I want to bring my first guest on the line. They have from what I gather, an interesting story about sleep paralysis and potentially an alien connection. But Becca, are you on the phone?
Yep. Hey, Samba.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm okay. I had mentioned during my little intro that I am actually experiencing a little back pain the last couple days, so I'm feeling a little achy right now. I'm trying to sit up straight like someone with good posture instead of someone who has awful posture like I actually do. But I'm doing. Other than that, I'm doing okay. So I'm glad to hear that you're okay as well. So let's get into it. Start however you'd like to start. If you want to give us a little background on sleep paralysis. Have you been experiencing this for a long time? Is this relatively new to you, or what's going on with you?
Yeah, so I've actually been experiencing sleep paralysis for about 13 years, maybe a little bit longer. Not every day, but definitely continuously, and the experience has changed somewhat over time. Yeah, it started back when I was in high school, and it started in what I gather is the usual way, where it would happen when I was falling asleep, and I would begin to experience sort of that feeling if you're beginning to fall asleep, and then you have sort of a halfway falling asleep dream where you fall down the stairs or something, and you kind of trip, and your arms and legs go everywhere, and you look like an idiot. There's something kind of like that. I would have that happen all the time. And one day I was falling asleep, and all of a sudden I couldn't move, and I was in my bed, and in the sleep paralysis experience, I did experience myself as still in my bed, and of course I couldn't move anything at all. And it was terrifying. It felt like, I didn't see an entity or anything like that, but it felt like there was some kind of presence around, and why couldn't I move? A very sinking feeling. So,
wow.
I started having this. I looked it up. I kind of knew about sleep paralysis. And, and I was telling everybody I could about it and talking about it all the time. And then, when I was a senior, it got really interesting. I was a senior in high school, and we had moved to a new house where I had this particular window in my bedroom, and I would always get sleep paralysis when I was lying on my back falling asleep. So this began to happen in this new place, in this new house, and it was still scary every time. And what happened was I was falling asleep. I found I couldn't move, and all of a sudden I could see kind of peripherally bright light coming in through my window. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? And I saw the light coming into the window, and I was really scared. I was very terrified. And I began to actually levitate out of the bed. And this had never, ever happened before. I was always very still in the sleep paralysis, and it was frightening because I was being pulled up off of the bed vertically, and I was moving towards the wall. I wasn't actually moving towards the window, like as if I was going out of the window, but I was starting to move towards the wall. And this happened actually more than once, a few times, and I believe it was quite a while ago. I believe it was during a brief period of time for a week or 2 weeks or so where this was happening repeatedly. And from that point on, I definitely sensed, again, I couldn't see any aliens, any entities specifically, but I definitely sensed a presence in the room, sort of outside of my zone of vision, every time that I was experiencing the sleep paralysis. So, as this developed, eventually that stopped. It was the most terrifying thing of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I fast forward to a few years later, I would still experience like regular sleep paralysis, and I would try and avoid sleeping on my back. I was doing everything I could to avoid it, but it would still happen sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I started to get into some spiritual stuff, and at a certain point, sort of maybe 5 years later, I would still experience the sleep paralysis. And it started happening less so when I was falling asleep and came more into place when I was waking up. And there would be a voice coming from what felt like the back of my head, pulling downwards. I would be on my back sleeping. It would always happen when I was on my back.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like it was coming from down below. And I couldn't understand. It was a very deep, sort of garbled sound, like trying to tell me something. It was very frightening. I felt like it was demonic, and I would try to struggle my way out of the sleep paralysis, which is something I had sort of learned to do, or at least thought I had convinced myself that I had learned to do, to sort of start wiggling a pinky, or, start to try and breathe in a certain way to, like, get myself out of this sort of state.
Right.
And this voice was terrifying. There were a few times where I felt like I could hear what it would say. I almost could hear what it would say. And when this was beginning to happen in the morning, or at least while I was waking up, it started to seem as though I could see not, something indistinct in front of me while I was experiencing, this voice at the same time. And, and that went on for a while. Eventually, it would kind of be off and on, and eventually I began to sort of think that it was perhaps not a demonic voice that was trying to get me, but perhaps, maybe this was like an aspect of my own soul, or an aspect of some kind of benevolent presence that was trying to get through, or like message trying to get through, that was being distorted. And that was why it sounded that way. So
okay.
I tried beginning to relax into it, because this had been going on for so many years.
Right.
I started learning to sort of relax into it, and usually through breathing, and I don't know, just being aware of kind of what was happening. I wouldn't panic as much as I used to.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a few times where it felt like the voice was fairly clear, but I couldn't remember it when I actually fully woke up. And, it continued over time, and it continues to this day. The last time I had sleep paralysis was about a week ago. And what has begun to happen more recently is that, well, I should say, during this whole time, there was a period where I lived with somebody who, if I would be asleep in the room and then they would walk into the room, I would start screaming, like, viscerally, and I wouldn't fully remember this when I woke up, but I would be screaming like bloody murder, like I was going to be killed or, disfigured or something.
Right.
When they would walk into the room, because I had started to see kind of like I said, like an entity or like a blurred shape in the room, in the dark, not actually visible to me. But it felt very threatening.
Mm-hmm.
And more recently, it happened where it's almost more like it will start in a dream, where I'm in a dream and I become almost as if in a lucid dream.
Yeah.
When a sinking feeling will like sort of take hold of me, all of a sudden my limbs in wherever I am in the dream start to go slow, like as if I'm moving through molasses. And I get this foreboding feeling, and it starts to feel, if you've seen the movie Get Out, like the way that they describe the sunken place, it feels rather like that. And I'll start to fall into myself. And what has happened more recently is that as I'm waking up out of this, but not yet full, it feels though I'm being dragged out of the bed, and I'm being dragged across the room.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, something. It's uncanny. It's very terrifying.
Right.
Still.
Yeah.
But since it's been going on for so long, I've learned techniques to kind of cope with it or not freak out like during every episode. But I do find myself waking up screaming for possibly even several minutes. With some regularity.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, don't mistake my laughter right now as laughing at your story or anything. My laughter is coming from a source of just how amazed I am at this the story that you're telling right now. I mean, without giving away your full identity or anything, just anyone else on the air right now who's listening. We haven't known each other for a long time, but we've known each other for a hot minute now, and this is the first time I've heard about this from you, and it's honestly insane to me that you've had to deal with this for so long. I mean, most of the people I've talked to about sleep paralysis, the other listeners on the air, they have stories that are pretty spooky, and then they've experienced it maybe a handful of times. Me myself, I've only experienced it. It was probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and it was maybe for about a month. I had it a few times a week for about a month, and then it kind of got out of it. But since then I've been all right. But you're still experiencing it to this day, and that's that's kind of insane to me. This is still like a thing that you're just living with.
Too.
Yeah.
It's interesting because over time my relationship to it has changed. Every time it happens, it's uncomfortable, it's scary. Like I said, I do continue to wake up screaming. That tends to be more in relationship to the feeling of a presence or entity, like in my room, in my physical room.
Yeah.
Less so during the dream. Am I freaking out? Usually during I call it a dream, but it's kind of like a transitionary zone from a dream to wakefulness. And it's different. And I started to, think back on it and think about those times when I was not, I don't remember being flown out of my window into a spaceship or anything like that kind of abduction, but definitely it felt a light was levitating me out of my bed and moving me towards the wall. I have thought about just different theories and different ideas that I have read about, abduction, sleep paralysis, where, I don't know, where aliens of some type are bringing in some kind of information, or I'm not sure exactly what you would call it, but where there's some kind of like preparation for like a further processes or something. So in any case, just the way that this has developed over time and changed has been very interesting to me.
Yeah, as it is to myself, and I'm sure the anyone else listening to this. I guess I'd like to know, is this? I mean, I appreciate you taking time out of your evening to share this story, and it seems like it's been a part of your life for a long time. So maybe this isn't as hard to talk about as it seems to me like it might be. But I mean, how does it feel to kind of think about all these moments in your life that have? I mean, for most people, myself included. If I was to have a sleep paralysis episode, much like yours, I would probably be freaked out of my mind for a long time. And you seem to at least have more of a grasp on it and be able to talk about it fairly easily at this point.
Yeah, I think it's because it's happened for so long. I have talked about sleep paralysis since I started having it, but I have rarely shared the more, otherworldly type aspects that have not showed themselves like in a very extremely full way, but sort of peppered in there.
Yeah.
Just because it feels like what's even going on here? Like, how to even talk about this sounds crazy.
Sure.
But yeah, it's very weird.
Yeah, to say the least, very weird. So right before we're approaching the bottom of the hour here, so I'm going to have to play my song of the night here in a few moments. But I do want to ask. So you did mention a few times that when you've lived with other people, you've had roommates or whatnot, that you've had some episodes of waking up screaming, violently screaming. How did these your roommates or the people you lived with, how do they react to that?
Yeah, very disturbed. I remember it particularly with one person who was my partner that I was living with at the time, and he was extremely concerned, about me and also about what the neighbors would think. I remember one time he came in and he said, "I thought somebody was in here because it sounded like you were getting killed."
Yeah.
And so it seems like it's very disturbing when it happens now. I do live alone now, but I have kind of close neighbors, and I'm always quite worried. No one has said anything to me yet, but I'm always quite worried that someone is going to call the police or something.
Sure.
When I wake up, screaming for minutes on end.
Dang.
So,
okay.
Wow. Hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. I mean, maybe people are just kind of doing the, I guess, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe for me, if I heard a neighbor,
it might not be as loud as it seems to me.
Maybe. Yeah, it might be. I mean, even, maybe you just got a good insulation in your house. I don't know. But at any rate, so yeah, it is the bottom of the hour. So I'm going to have to bid you adieu. But I want to thank you so much for taking, like I said, the time out of your evening to talk about this and kind of share your experiences and sort of this. I won't say lifelong, but definitely over a decade of sort of these very weird, I would say, paranormal experiences. And it really means a lot to me for you to share that. What's that?
I said definitely feels paranormal. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. And enjoy the rest of your show.
Thank you. And I'll message you after the show because I'm still interested in your story, and I have a few more questions. But I'll message you after the show. But thank you very much for being on the air.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Anyways, that was Becca giving us quite the story there. Very honestly, more disturbing and just like sort of paranormal, weird, disturbing. I felt bad. I felt bad in the sense that when I think back to my sleep paralysis stories and experiences, as well as some of the experiences of some of the voicemails I got, they're very spooky and they're very potentially traumatic depending on when they happen and how often they happen. But I can't imagine going through over a decade of this kind of experience happening, especially during a situation where you're sleeping and much like I talked about on Monday, you're that's the most vulnerable time of day for you and for humans in general is when they're sleeping, and to have this kind of take you out of that kind of peaceful slumber and put you in a very high stress sort of defense mode is it's not something I really want to experience anytime soon. So again, thank you very much, Becca, for being on the air and sharing your experiences. And I hope that maybe you're right. Maybe it is a benevolent force trying to make some kind of connection from the other side, but maybe we'll find out someday. Anyways, it's the bottom of the hour. I want to play my song of the night, and then we're going to get into more stories of sleep paralysis and potentially your calls as well. Tonight's song of the night is coming from Otzi from Oakland, California. The song's Cruel Economy from their 2017 album Ghosts. I will be back after the song, and we'll open up the rest of the phone lines for everyone else. Phone number for the show is 520-704-7820. Open lines after Otzi. Hell yeah, that was the band Otzi with their song Cruel Economy from the 2017 album Ghosts. Now, if you want to throw some cruel bones towards Otzi, you can find them at otzi.bandcamp.com. That's OTZI.bandcamp.com. Anyways, the time is 9:34. It is open lines. Phone number for the show is 520-704-7820. If you want to call in and share your sleep paralysis stories, any theories you have on sleep paralysis, if you have any paranormal adventures in sleep, then now is the time to do it. So please give me a call if you have any interest in that. Now, before I move on to some of these voicemails that y'all left me, I want to check some of these comments and see what's popping over here on the old Instagram comments. Quiverlip, Dead Milkman. Yes, love me a little Dead Milkman. Hello there, Trial and Error Collective. Night meat is pretty cool too. Yeah, everyone likes a little bit of night meat. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., whatever it is, waking yourself out of a deep slumber from sleep paralysis just to smell the meat of the night. Trial and Error Collective, there seriously needs to be a sleep paralysis support group because it can be very traumatic. I hope your caller finds peace. So, Becca, if you're still listening, or if you're on the airwaves right now listening to the show, you got some support come over here from Trial and Error Collective, and we do appreciate you sharing your story. And I'm imagining there probably is a sleep paralysis support group in some way, maybe a smaller, like localized support group somewhere. I haven't researched it, so if anyone wants to do that and see if that's a thing and let me know in the comments, I am more than happy to share that with everyone else. Eggs and Eyes, I feel like sharing sleep paralysis experiences kind of need to be normalized if this many people are experiencing it, even if it's just once or twice, like myself. I agree, and hello there, Eggs and Eyes. I agree that it needs to be normalized somewhat because, or I want to say somewhat, it needs to be normalized in the sense that it is a fairly common experience. Not everyone is going to experience it, but enough people do that it needs to be known that it's not necessarily harmful. No one is dying from sleep paralysis. For the most part, no one's injuring themselves in a fit of restlessness during sleep paralysis. But it is a very psychological issue that can make you feel sort of isolated and potentially, isolated and weird, if you will, to quote The Simpsons. So yes, it's not something to be ashamed about, and it's definitely a spooky experience, as we're going to hear in just a few moments. Trial and Error Collective and Eggs and Eyes, thank you for sharing, caller. Thank you, caller. So again, Becca, thank you for sharing your story. And Quiverlip, this jam is jamming. Yes, I love me a little Otzi. Discovered them while I was on my way to put together last week's Tarantula's Dream Radio show, broadcasting every Monday night from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. over on Downtown Radio, KTDT Tucson. Anyway, so let's get to some of your voicemails, and hopefully we'll maybe hear from a few more people over the phone if they have anything. But so this first story is coming from a listener, obviously, and I appreciate them taking the time out of their day to share. This was the first call I got today, so let's give it a listen.
Hey, Samba. So I was just calling to relay my sleep paralysis story. Mine happened probably about 10 years ago, and it's only happened to me once, luckily. Basically, I woke up, and it was actually I'm pretty sure a full moon because I could see everything in my room, and normally it would be pitch black. But I didn't see or hear anything weird, unlike most people's experiences. But I did start to panic because I went to sit up and I couldn't move. I really struggled. Like, I struggled to move my arms and my legs, but mostly I did feel the pressure on my chest, and I just couldn't sit up. So, I don't know. I don't really believe in ghosts or anything like that. But at that point, I kind of accepted that if it was a ghost, then it wasn't going to appear to me. There was nothing I can do, so I basically just accepted my fate, and I closed my eyes, and I just went back to sleep because I couldn't fight it, and nothing really bad was happening to me. And then I woke up the next day, and I actually forgot about it for a second, and then when I remembered what happened, I asked my parents, and they just thought it was weird. They didn't know what it was. And then I Googled, like, my symptoms because it started to freak me out. And then that's when I found out about sleep paralysis. But, yeah, mine's not very dramatic. But, yeah, I guess my tip for people out there is if you're not seeing anything weird, just go back to sleep. Anyways, I hope you have a good show. Hopefully I can tune in. Bye.
There you go. That was our first voicemail. I'm going to leave this little tape player playing so I don't have to switch back to the other camera. But I want to thank that caller for calling in and sharing that story, and for giving us a little piece of advice. If you find yourself in a sleep paralysis situation and you don't know what to do, just try to go back to sleep. Which, honestly, I'm not saying that's not a bad sort of piece of advice at all. In fact, that does feel like the probably the most natural thing to do. Ooh, it looks like we do have a caller over here. Let me get you on the line real quick. Let me go back to my... Hello, caller. You're on Tarantulas Dream TV.
Hey, Samba Slice. This is Pizza Pie in the Sky. How you doing?
Oh, I'm just great, Pizza Pie. Nice to hear from you. I got your voicemail earlier on in the day, but yes, I definitely noticed that you got cut off. So I'm glad to hear that you're calling back and going to share the full adventure with the Tarantulas Dream TV audience. So I'm going to get off the mic and let you just do your thing. Tell us about your sleep paralysis story.
All righty. Well, yeah, I won't take up too much time because I know you got some other voicemails to get to, but yeah, similar to your last caller, it's kind of been going on since I was in high school, and it's progressively just gotten weirder and weirder. You know, I had just the original paralysis, being freaked out, and then it moved to the hallucinations, a lot of the classic ones you talked about last week of, you know, someone coming and sitting on your chest or, you know, all the classic things. But I'd say probably my most interesting ones, because I think as my brain kind of got more used to it, I'm able to my brain's gotten more creative, let's say, with the hallucination. So instead of it just being a shadow figure, one time I actually saw, like, someone I know in, like, full detail, like, immaculate detail, come into my room and, like, take a pillow and put it over my head. So that was wild.
Wow.
And I had, so that was really, he does not like that story because he's like, what is going on in your subconscious? But one time I was sleeping, this was only a couple months ago or a year ago or so. I was at my mom's house and I fell asleep on the couch, and so my back was facing the living room and I was, like, facing the couch, so I couldn't see in front of me. But I woke up to the sound of like a camera shutter, like someone was taking a picture of me. And I smiled because I was like, oh, that's funny. My mom thinks it's funny and she's taking a picture of me. But you kind of get this sense that, like, I knew, like, that's not a good presence. Like, this is not my mom. And then as soon as my brain realized, like, okay, someone's in the house and taking pictures of me, at the same time, it sounded like this blood-curdling, like, screaming coming from the other side of the house. And in my head, I was registering, like, oh, my God, my mom is being murdered, and there's someone here in the house taking pictures of me, and I can't move. So that one was pretty wild.
Yeah, that one, that one took a turn that I wasn't... I wasn't expecting that, having mental images of you, someone taking pictures of you, having a little photo shoot while in the background they're snuffing out your mom. Yeah, that's pretty dark, Pizza Pie.
It's wild. Yeah, it gets wild when the auditory hallucinations come in.
Oh, yeah.
But I'd say my most recent one was really wild because, like your last caller was saying too, I get a lot of times I get sleep paralysis if I get into a lucid dream.
Yeah.
And I wake up unexpectedly. And the last one I had was crazy because it's also hard to gauge how long this actually is in real time because, dream time feels so much longer. But I woke up, had sleep paralysis, and then fell back asleep. And then in my dream, I was like, oh, my God, I'm paralyzed. And this went on like 3 or 4 times where I'd wake up again, still be paralyzed, go back to sleep. And then so in my dream, I was trying desperately to find out, like I was going up to every single person and being like, excuse me, do you know how I can get up? Do you know how I can get out of this? And it turned into this whole thing. And then I went to this like science lab and there was all these scientists that were like watching a video of me sleeping and being like, okay, how do I back out? And it was this whole insane adventure that took hours. Like, well, I mean, who knows? Actually,
it was probably like 30 seconds, to be honest.
No, but that's the crazy thing. Like, and then I kept waking back up again, still being paralyzed, and then going to the same dream. And we'd be like, okay, that didn't work. How do we? Yeah. So.
All right.
Pretty wild, honestly. Yeah, it takes. I haven't had any alien type encounters, but. It's wild. It really kind of progresses and takes on its own its own chorus.
Yeah.
So those are my spooky Halloween spectacular stories of being murdered and paralyzed in my sleep.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out to share these stories. I know they can potentially be triggering and sort of bring people back to a place that they may not necessarily want to go to, but I do appreciate you sharing this story. And I mentioned it on the last show that I was going to have more of a sort of a spooky ghost story type situation episodes at the end of the month. So don't show all your cards yet. If you have any more spooky stories or any more spooky experiences, please share them or please hold them close to the chest until maybe the end of the month. You don't want to show your cards too early.
Oh yeah. I keep them in a vault, my friend. So.
Okay. Well, as long as you know the passcode and you're ready to open them up in probably about 2 weeks, then keep them in that vault. But anyways, thank you so much for sharing your paranormal lifestyle, Pizza Pie.
Yeah, thank you for the show, and I look forward to hearing the rest of these voicemails.
All right, well, I'm going to get back into it. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
There you go. That was Pizza Pie coming at you hot with a story, some more sleep paralysis adventure. So let's get back to this reel-to-reel over here, and I'm going to throw on my next voicemail from listener Honeycomb Viper. She has quite the story. It was split into 2 different voicemails because for whatever reason, Skype's voicemail, the time frame they give you is like 2 minutes. It's like they want you to be in and out of this voicemail real quick, so I had to edit it together. But here you go. This is listener Honeycomb Viper with another spooky sleep paralysis adventure.
Hi, so this is Honeycomb Viper calling in for Samba to share my sleep paralysis experience. So when we were first falling in love, I told my partner, don't be afraid if I wake up screaming. For a period of about 2 years, I had sleep paralysis about twice a month. I would wake paralyzed to slim, shadowy figures. They were faceless, and they filled the corners of my room, and they positioned themselves just so to where they fell out of my line of sight. And I feel their presence, and I know they're watching me, but I don't know if they are a who or a what, since I can't turn to look, and I feel like a victim trapped by a party of voyeurs. And I would have to scream myself awake. And when I would scream myself awake, it almost felt like fighting for air when you've been underwater for too long, that burning survival panic instinct that's dormant in your lizard brain. And it was a struggle to get the sound out, but I would regain full control of my body and my consciousness the moment the shriek passed my lips. It was like a switch went off, and the moment I screamed, the figures disappeared. So time went by, and the shadowy figures became a figure, and the figure gradually moved closer to me until it found itself from the walls of my room to the foot of my bed to floating directly over my body. And I had to lay wide-eyed at a hag whose skeletal fingers and stringy hair would tickle my face, and we would look into each other's eyes until I could scream myself to movement. And Hello again, Samba. This is Honeycomb Viper to finish off my sleep paralysis story, and now I'm very afraid that the hag may have been listening, considering right where I got cut off. But eventually one day the hag was gone. I don't know what changed in myself or in my circumstance, but I haven't seen her in a very long time, though I do have to say that right now I am very afraid that she may be listening into this voicemail. So that's it. That's the story.
There you go. That was Honeycomb Viper, a listener of the show, sharing their experience with sleep paralysis and the first mention of the night, as far as I can tell, of the traditional old hag coming into play with their sleep paralysis story. That's much like I talked about on Mondays. The old hag is a common sighting in people who have sleep paralysis experiences. So, Honeycomb Viper, if you're listening, if you're somewhere there on the airwaves, I'm hoping you never see this old hag ever again. I feel weird saying old hag. It feels I don't like saying that word, hag. It feels weird. I don't know if anyone else has that kind of thing where there's just certain words you don't like to say, and saying the hag, it just seems weird. Anyway, we have one more voicemail from a listener. This is a good friend of mine, and he's here to share his experience with sleep paralysis. Listener Ben is sharing a hot story of adventures in sleep paralysis.
Hey Samba, this is Ben. I'm calling into my sleep paralysis story. So I've only ever had the experience one time, and it was back probably my junior year of college. I was sleeping just like normal, and then around like 3 a.m. in the middle of the night, I was bolt awake. I was just awake. I was laying on my back, and it sort of felt like I couldn't move. And I saw this like big, tall, black figure standing at the foot of my bed. And my first subconscious impression was, oh, it's my roommate. And so I was able to talk, and so I just said my roommate's name a couple times, and the figure didn't really move, and it seemed like it was maybe like kind of like shifting of like a tiny bit. And so then I had this feeling of terror just kind of washed over me, because I was like, oh, this isn't my roommate. This is somebody who's come in to our apartment, and he's going to like rob me, or he's going to kill me or something. And so I was like super scared. And then finally I was able to pull myself up out of bed, and I just kind of like caught forward and yelled my roommate's name. And as I did, that shadowy figure at the foot of my bed kind of just like disappeared. And it was really, really weird. And yeah, I just remember this like feeling of like terror and an inability to do anything about it. So yeah, that's my sleep paralysis experience.
There you go. That was Hello, everybody. Looks like we're back on the air. That was one of the spookiest disconnects I've ever had. I'm hoping people can reconnect over here. I'm going to re-enable these comments, and hopefully people can reconnect. That was a spooky disconnect right as we were done sharing the voicemails of sleep paralysis victims, as well as our very intriguing and very eye-opening phone call with listener Becca. I'm hoping if anyone is back on the air, I'm going to just kind of reiterate what happened. I was sharing my take on some of these sleep paralysis stories, and out of nowhere, my broadcasting software over here gave me a little indication that I was disconnected, and sometimes that does happen. The way I'm able to get these shows on the air is kind of through a backdoor method, as I've talked about in the past. Instagram doesn't like you using devices or services other than their own to live stream. So disconnects do happen. So it may not necessarily be a spooky sort of happening with this disconnect. Having said that, the timing was very sus, happening right after I had finished kind of playing these voicemails, had been talking about the old hag. Ben had just shared his sleep paralysis story. So potentially, Ben, it looks like you're on the air. Benjamin, I'm truly terrified. It looks like potentially you were the one who disconnected my streaming over here. I don't know. Trial and Error Collective, Spooky, and El Christine 729. Hello there. And is that a kitty cat looking all scared over there? Anyway, so yes, that was the last of our voicemails, and as well as the last of my sanity over here, getting disconnected in the middle of a spooky episode like that. But anyway, it looks like I'm back on the air, and we'll be able to finish this show off slightly later than normal, as now I have a new stream going, so I don't have to be so quick about it. Anyways, I want to thank everyone for sharing their sleep paralysis stories. If anyone has any more sleep paralysis stories, feel free to give me a call, as I'm going to extend the show maybe an extra 5 minutes or so before I get off the air and rest my back and maybe eat a little dinner. I'm not eating before broadcast anymore, so I don't get all burpy. But phone number for the show is 520-704-7820. Trial and Error Collective, you have been cursed by the hag. You must share this comment 1,000 times to be uncursed. Wow. Well, what do I share it to? Just to Instagram? Or everyone else on the comments? If you want to share that and decurse me, I would appreciate that. Anyway, so I guess I can share my own personal experience with sleep paralysis. So probably about 6, 7, maybe 8 years ago. I'm not 100% sure when this time frame was, but I was living in a studio sort of, I guess you could call it like an apartment. It wasn't... it wasn't, I guess, it was an apartment. We'll call it that. It was one bedroom, just kind of, and then there was one other room that was sort of just kind of a kitchen catch-all living room. It was very small, extremely small. I was living in this house, and I had my dog Monkey. Some of the listeners have met Monkey before, but I had Monkey with me, and I was living in this house for a little while, a couple months, and probably roughly for about a month. Every week I would experience sleep paralysis, like I said earlier, about twice a week. Now, during these episodes, it was definitely the waking up sleep paralysis, the hypnopompic, I believe, sleep paralysis, when it's happening to you when you're waking up. I experienced that a number of times, and essentially every single time I had a experience with sleep paralysis in that particular house, it was essentially the same. I'd wake up, the room would be lit. It was fairly dark, but it was probably roughly around 5 or 6 a.m. So the sun was starting to kind of show a little more light. It wasn't quite as dark as it was maybe at like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I would notice to my left, the door, I would see a figure in the door. Now, the figure in the door was fairly fuzzy, fairly hazy, but I could tell that they seemed to be fairly tall, fairly skinny. I didn't see any sort of eyeballs or a mouth of any kind, but this figure would walk towards me while I was laying in the bed. And the only thing that would kind of give me sort of peace and comfort during the sleep paralysis episode was the fact that my dog, that Monkey, was in the bed with me, and I was able to kind of lean on the idea that this animal, if there was a presence in the room that wasn't supposed to be there, that they would hopefully protect me, maybe bark, maybe growl, maybe even attack. I don't know, but fortunately it never came to that, and I would awaken. It felt like it was maybe like 10-15 minutes this is happening, but much like a listener, Pizzo Pie, had said, when you're kind of in a half dream state, time kind of doesn't really mean anything. Your 1 hour in fantasy land is probably only about 5 seconds in the real world. So who knows how long that would last. And my second story with sleep paralysis happened when I was living in a different house with a few people. I remember sleeping I was in bed, like many sleep paralysis stories start, and this one did happen roughly probably about 2 or 3 in the morning. And I remember waking up and not being able to move. And I remember, a figure standing on the side of the bed. This one seemed to be fairly tall as well. And it almost felt like there was a number of figures in the room, but I definitely remember at least one. And this figure was shining a light on me, or there was a light, a very direct light on me. And I remember not being able to move. And I know what everyone's saying. Alien contact, alien sort of abduction. I don't know. I've never really dived into it too deep. I've never done any hypnotherapy. I've never talked to anyone, memory regression or anything. So this is as far as I can tell you what it was. But I couldn't move. There was a figure next to the bed, and they were shining a light on me. And I do remember eventually being able to shoot up in bed and realizing that it was either a dream or it was most likely sleep paralysis. The interesting thing that happened after I had kind of shot up out of bed was that someone actually came to the house I was living in, and one of my roommates who was living in the house was actually living in the living room. They slept on a futon in the living room, and so someone actually came to the house roughly around 2 or 3 in the morning and knocked on the door. And of course they were the ones who opened the door because they were sleeping 1 foot away from the door pretty much. And it was just a guy who, I guess his car broke down or something, or he needed to come in the house. I don't know if he needed to use the phone or he just needed some sort of help, but he seemed very sketchy. He wasn't particularly pushy as far as I remember, but it was just a very weird kind of happenstance to have this sleep paralysis episode, have this experience of something next to the bed, an entity next to the bed shining a light, waking up, and immediately the door knocking and someone being there who I did not know. But those are my experiences with sleep paralysis. I haven't had it in many years. I'm happy to report that is the case. So I'm hoping after listening to all these spooky stories that it doesn't happen to me anytime soon. Anyway, so that is the end of the show for tonight. I want to thank every single listener who shared their story on the air. Whether it was leaving a voicemail, I appreciate you taking the time to do that, or caller Becca calling in and letting us in into a little bit their personal life and their experience. 13 years, I believe they said, of experiencing sleep paralysis, as well as different incidents of potentially alien contact, of voices, maybe benevolent voices, I'm not sure. But ultimately, that's quite the time frame to be experiencing this over and over again. So I hope that I hope they're doing fine. But anyways, again, everyone, thank you again for tuning in. This is one of my favorite episodes I've done because of how many people joined in and kind of shared the experience with me. I believe I'll be back next week on Monday and Wednesday. I say that because with my back kind of feeling the way it is, I might need to not sit in this chair for like maybe a hot minute. This chair is very unsupportive. If you see it, you just shake your head at me. It's a very uncomfortable desk chair. But I believe I'll be back next week, Monday and Wednesday, to broadcast a live show of a paranormal happening, spooky business as we quickly approach the Halloween week episodes of Ghost Stories. I'm also broadcasting over on 99.1 FM Downtown Radio, KTDT Tucson, on Monday nights from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. So please listen over there. And I'm going to be messaging everyone who sent me a voicemail to just make sure and get your permission that I can use your story on the air over on Downtown Radio. Anyway, so I will be back next week. Please, everyone, enjoy the rest of your weeks if you can. Wear a mask, social distance if you go outside, and remember, it is a weird, weird world. Take care.